and he came to the door, and they showed him his badge. They didn't say anything. He says, "Well, you got me." And he later went and he died in prison just a few years ago. But that received a lot of national attention, but the attention was good because of what our system did. He could have just died at home, but we caught him. So Probation Pro is very proud of that.
Okay. We have a few minutes left, and I'd like to open the questioning up to the members of our audience here. So we have a small audience here. You come forward with your questions.
Hi, how are y'all? My name is Jocelyn, and I was wondering, how did your educational background prepare you for your job?
Well, I got the mic. I guess I'll get started. I'm a graduate of Northwestern, and I feel like I had a great career. I got to meet a lot of interesting people, do some things that I never dreamed of, and meeting those people that I never thought I would get to meet. So I felt like that I had a quality education here at Northwestern. It enabled me to qualify for various positions, and so as far as my education was concerned, I had a 4-year college degree, and I picked it up and ran with it. And my wife says to this day that I got a lot of mileage out of that 4-year college degree I got here at Northwestern. And since then, when I retired, I got my master's degree, and that put me in a position where I could teach at the college level. Okay.
I have a college degree in history. Back when I was hired as a probation parole officer at age 22, I could get hired for that. These days, probation and parole has excelled and moved up, and is generally looking, whether it's juvenile or adult, or even federal, is looking for people with criminal justice degrees. We're looking for people who want to spend the rest of their career in a great job like probation and parole, and I think it's a really great job. So in my case, I'm the exception to the rule. I probably could not be hired today as a probation parole officer with just a history degree. I urge you to work hard in criminal justice, try to learn work as an intern or something with local law enforcement agencies, get some skills, get some knowledge of guns. We're all post-certified. That means we have the same abilities to arrest people as any police officer, state trooper, or anything like that. So I urge you to get a criminal justice degree. We're looking these days for good people with criminal justice degrees. And the last 7 people I've hired, I think 5 had criminal justice degrees over this past summer.
And let me say, in addition to what I was saying earlier, I tried to put myself in a position when I graduated to try to obtain the positions, the type of jobs I wanted. I had met a state probation officer when I was here. He was taking some classes at Northwestern. He talked about the job he had and how much he liked it. And I thought, boy, that sounds like it's a pretty neat job. And so I always had it in the back of my mind that, well, being a probation officer sounds like it'd be pretty cool. And so right out of college, I took a job as a substance abuse counselor. And then I went to a mental health clinic, and not as a patient, but as a counselor. And I spent a couple of years at the mental health clinic as a counselor. And then I went to law enforcement for a couple of years, which opened the door for me to, because I worked juvenile at the police department, and I was a crisis counselor and mainly dealing with adolescents. So it put me in a position when I was offered a position as a chief juvenile probation officer. I took it, and then that put me in a position where I had taken these steps to make myself as attractive as I possibly could for a prospective employer. And that's the key. You may not be getting that job you're dreaming of when you graduate from college, but what you want to do is take the steps to make yourself the most attractive applicant. And that's one of the things that I tried to do.
I got a degree from Northwestern here, and it was one of the main requirements for being hired as a juvenile probation officer was that you have to have a bachelor's degree. So that allowed me to get that job. But at the time, when I graduated, I had no intention of being in law enforcement, so it didn't really prepare me for, my education didn't prepare me for that. Okay.
What are the youngest ages that y'all have had to deal with, and what kind of offenses do those people tend to make?
Well, like I say, as a juvenile probation officer, there were, man, I had kids 8, 9 years old. You know, some of them would be for, like I said, just not minding their parents, and some of them would be for felony criminal damage to property. You know, so it was a whole range of things. Yeah, they start pretty young sometimes.
I had 2 cases I'd like to mention. One was we had a complainant that he was a real estate guy, and he had some rental property, and somebody was tearing up one of his rental houses, vandalizing it, putting it in a situation where he couldn't rent it. And if he fixed it up, it was torn up again. So we started trying to find the bad guys. And so one day I get a call from one of our officers who's found the bad guys. And so I go to the scene, and he's got about 5 little kids, 4, 5, and 6 years old, in the back of his police car. He's thrown them in the cage. And I get up there and I said, "What's going on?" He said, "I caught the guys that are tearing up that house." I said, "What are you doing with them in the cage?" He said, "I'm going to take them down and book them in." And I'm like, "You can't do that." And he said, "What do you mean I can't?" I said, "They're babies. You can't do that." And mamas are dancing around the car, screaming and pulling their hair out and whatever. And I said, "Get them out of the car and give them back to their mamas." And so he said, "You're kidding." I said, "No, get them out of the car and give them back to their mamas." So he got them out of the car, gave them back to their mamas, and I said, "I'll take care of it from here." And so he left, and I told the moms, I said, "Look, I want y'all to come down to the police station. I want you to bring the kids, and I want everybody in there by 4 o'clock. And so a couple of them asked if they could wait till their husband came home, and I said, "Well, as long as you're there by 4 o'clock. So they all showed up, and finally I get the kid, the 5-year-old that was the ringleader. There was one girl involved. The others were little boys. And so he's sitting there, and I'm interviewing him. He's got his mama on one side of him, his daddy on the other. And I said, "Okay, buddy, I want to know, why did you break into that house?" And he said, "We wanted a fort." "Okay, you wanted a fort. I can buy that. I understand that. But why did you tear it up?" And one of the most honest answers I ever got, he said, "We didn't want nobody moving in." And it was everything I could do to keep from laughing, you know. And then I had a 13-year-old. As far as the case, is probably the worst case I had. The kid had a lot of issues. His mother was not very intelligent. They lived in a housing project. He wouldn't go to school, which is what got our attention to start with. The school system filed a petition that, you know, alleging that he wouldn't go to school and whatever. And basically, that's a status offense. A status offense is, if it's not against the law for an adult, it's not against the law for a juvenile. It's a status offense. You can't lock them up. Now, the judge can put them on probation, and if they don't do what the judge said, then the judge can find them in contempt of court, and that is a violation. But for running away, not going to school, if an adult doesn't want to go to school, it's not against the law. If an adult wants to run away from home, it's not against the law. For a juvenile, it's a status offense. And so this kid, that's how he first came to our attention. Then he stole a can of Skull, or a roll of Skull, and he had some restitution to pay, and he went up and picked up cans on the side of the road to make his restitution. But he still wouldn't go to school, so we were going to put him in a children's home, and we finally got him into a children's home in Pine Bluff, and he was down there a couple of months, and he came back. I tried to talk him out of it because I knew he was going to get in trouble. The kid tortured animals, he started fires, and he wet the bed. And that is the kind of the golden triangle of a serial killer in the making. And so when I left juvenile court, he was about 13, pushing 14. And about a year later, I read in the paper, 15-year-old, I told the folks at juvenile court when I left, I said, "Keep an eye on Chris. It's just a matter of time before he kills a kid." And about a year later, I read in the paper, 15-year-old rapes and murders 2-year-old. Chris is serving life without parole. He was charged as an adult. He's in the Arkansas Department of Corrections as of today. He is there, and he is right where he needs to be.
As far as the question about what type of probation and parolees, when I first started at age 22, the average probation state, and of course we only supervise adults, I've supervised people from 18 to 87. When I first started at age 22, the average age of a probation parolee was 34 to 35. Now it's down to 24, 25. The youngest people, 18 and 19, virtually every crime is drug-related, either primarily or secondarily, where either it's a crime of possession or dealing, or where they commit a crime to gather money to buy drugs. And so drugs, I think, just as a side note, affects crimes probably 85%, either primarily or secondarily, and that drug crimes are the #1 crimes out there right now.
What skills have you learned in being a parole officer?
What skills?
Yes, sir.
One of the things that in my opinion anyway, that you have to be able to do is evaluate the individuals you have on supervision. That's why you have a pre-sentence report. You want to do a thorough pre-sentence report. You want to have everything in there about that individual, about the offensive conviction, about his family history, his education, financial condition. All of those kind of issues are important. You also want to have information in there about his associates. And you also want to have information in there if he's got a pit bull under the front porch. And you also want to have his prior record, all of that sort of stuff. But knowing who you have on supervision is key, and what they're capable of doing. So if you have a situation where you have an individual on probation and a crime occurs in maybe a neighboring area, and you hear about it, you go, gee, that sounds like my guy. You know, and so that way you know that individual well enough to where you can say, hey, I believe my guy might be involved in this. I had an individual on supervision that wouldn't go to work, which was a condition of his supervision, and because he wouldn't go to work, he didn't have the funds to make restitution for his previous crime, which was he was a thief. And so I made a home visit. I put pressure on him. I said, look, you're violating your supervision. You're not working. You're not going to school. You're also violating your supervision because you're sitting here laying on your rear end and you're not doing anything to make restitution to the victim. So I'm telling you, if you don't get a job and start making restitution, I'm going to the judge with a revocation, you know, and haul you back to court. On the way out of town, I stopped by the sheriff's office. I told him, I said, Sheriff, I got so-and-so on supervision, what have you. I'm putting pressure on him to make restitution. I know he's probably not going to get a job. He's a thief. So if you have something develop along those lines, I just want to let you know that my guy's probably going to be involved. Over the weekend, the guy broke into a hardware store, stored a lot of power equipment and whatever, and he planned on selling them and trying to make some money to make restitution. When the sheriff got the call, he went straight to the guy's house, and there his stuff was out in the backyard. So you want to know who you have on supervision. To me, that's the key, is being able to read people, you know who you're dealing with. And like the gentleman said, when you show up someplace and you're uncomfortable, leave. You can go back another day. You don't want to get into a situation where there's a bunch of people that you don't know. You know, even though you may have to find a guy, there are certain things that you can do. I tracked a guy down that hadn't reported to me, showed up at this convenience store, had a lot of folks there, got out of I took my weapon off. I figured they had more artillery than I did. Took my weapon off, I put it under my seat in my truck, I got out. All I could hear was them talking about me coming up there because I didn't look like them. And when I got up there, it was, what do you want? And so I said, I'm looking for so-and-so. And they said, what do you want him for? I said, I'm with State Farm Insurance. I got a check for him. And they go, oh, that's him right over there. So you got to know how to, you know, kind of work things to your benefit. And one key, in my opinion, is knowing who you have on supervision.
I understood the question right. It was, what skills do you need for the job or have learned on the job? Listening and observation. People love to talk, but when I'm talking, I'm not learning anything. Maybe you're learning something from what I'm saying now, maybe not, I don't know. But listening and watching these people is a tremendous skill that you need to develop, because people probation officers sometimes like to lord over, and you do this, you do that, you stop doing this. But when we learn and listen and spend the time